Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
At the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. Now's the best time to get that Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus, every new Hyundai comes with America's Best Warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of limited complimentary maintenance. Don't think you can get away with all that? Think again. The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. It's a great day for a new Hyundai.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that's Andrew Gillis. It is draft week. Former Buckeyes becoming NFL players. We'll be having draft-centered things all week long. Obviously, we'll do our draft predictor pod later this week. I also just want to evaluate Ohio State's ability to develop NFL draft players at different positions. And so we'll be doing stuff like that. And we'll be including Texas in some of these things. 614-350-3315, 2-week retrial, $399 after that. But today, we're going more grand scheme with things. And we are ranking the 10 best NFL draft prospects in the Ohio State ecosystem. And so what that means is anybody who is currently going through the NFL draft process and could get drafted this year, that's guys like Will Howard, guys like Josh Simmons, guys like Jack Sawyer and Denzel Burke. It also means guys who are currently on the roster, guys like Caleb Downs, guys like Devin Sanchez, guys like Tavian St. Clair and Edric Houston, and on down the list there. And then anyone who is currently committed as of the time we are recording this podcast. And we're recording this podcast on Thursday, April 17th. You guys are getting it on a Monday the following week. Not great at dates. You guys are getting this April 21st. We're recording this April 17th. So if anybody commits between April 17th and April 21st, tough. We're just not going to consider them in this pod because Ohio State's been on a commitment spree the last couple of weeks, so things happen, but we can't. I mean, we can predict the future. Sometimes. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But everybody is considered. So before we get into this, both Andrew and Stefan and I all made our own separate list, and we're going to do things the way we had started doing things this year, where we're going to come to a consensus list. So, Stefan, you texted me back after I sent that long paragraph. I wonder who is going to go number one. Was that without giving away, was that easy, who you were going to put at number one and why?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. I think we know there's a guy on the current roster who is going to go top 5 in the NFL draft, no questions asked.
But Andrew, does that mean he's automatically number one on this list?
No, but it's an interesting conversation because Jeremiah has the highest floor of anybody.
I don't think anyone else on this list is a generational talent.
No,
but he's also not a quarterback.
He's also not. Here's the interesting world.
Marv went number 3, and we talk about him being better than Marv.
Right. And there were still 2 or 3 quarterbacks who went before him. That's the conversation. I think if we're just doing like who's the best player, it's going to be Jeremiah Smith when he's up for his NFL draft, and that's what we're talking about. Jeremiah Smith for one. When they have his draft board in 2027, you are right, Stefan. He is going to be number one on everybody's draft board.
Yeah, the
NFL draft's weird.
Yep. Here's the problem with this. Like, let's say Julian Sayin hits his ceiling and is a 3-and-done college quarterback. All due respect to Jeremiah Smith, and trust me, there's a lot of respect due to Jeremiah Smith. If you're an NFL team sitting at the top of a draft going, well, we really suck. We need a lot. Are you taking Jeremiah Smith or are you taking somebody you think could be a franchise quarterback? That's the problem. That's the question. So Jeremiah has the highest floor of anybody that we're going to discuss because I don't see a world in which Jeremiah falls out of the top 5 because even in years where there's just a ton of quarterbacks, there's really only like 3, maybe 4 that you could discuss, but it's usually like 2 or 3 that kind of get thrown into this mix. And if it's a great quarterback year, well, okay, well then you could just bump Jeremiah down and then he goes to 4 or 5 or whatever. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But there are
it's not about quarterbacks
that,
not in this draft, though. It's not about quarterbacks on this, not on this team. And I think the thing that makes it an interesting case study is Julian Sand. Do we think Julian Sand right now, just simply because he's a quarterback, if he's going to be the starter here the next 2 years and he's on the same trajectory that Justin Fields and CJ Stroud were as top 50 recruits who ended up being Ohio State starting quarterback in their second year of college football, do we think that has a better chance of being the number 1 pick in the NFL draft in 2027 or Jeremiah Smith? And the reason I'm asking is Julian Sand is also not the size that CJ Stroud and Justin Fields were, or he's not the athlete that Justin Fields was. Now, we think he's got some arm talent, but we haven't seen him play football yet. So this is like Bryce Young and Marvin Harrison Jr. being in the same draft class. Who do we think would have went higher?
I still lean Jeremiah. I think the size is an NFL concern when it comes to Julian Sand. I don't know. I struggle with it because I get what you guys are saying. Like, I understand the quarterback thing, but I still put Jeremiah 1 because I know what his floor is. Like, we can say all this can happen and Julian could go number 1. I mean, yeah, but where would you have him right now, realistic? Like, because of his size, it's likely that he would be, like a day 2 pick? Are we sure that he's a day 1 pick? Like, for sure? Like, I went Jeremiah 1 because I know at the very worst, he's the number 5 overall pick? So I went with the floor thing just because every single prospect that we name, we could say, well, if all of this happens, he could be the number 1 pick. I mean, yeah, you could say that about Taven. You could say that about whatever quarterback you want. But if we're being realistic, like, a lot of things have to go Julian's way to be the number 1 pick, right? Number 2 pick. And at that point, we know Jeremiah is somewhere in that top 5. So a lot of things would have to go right. Can I add another point to this conversation? I don't know if Julian Sand's the best NFL prospect of the quarterbacks in the ecosystem. I don't think the best prospect is on the roster right now.
I was going to bring that up. Like, can we bring Taven St. Clair and Brady Edmonds into this conversation?
Yeah.
Because we did a similar
exercise. My number 2.
Okay. Andrew, we did a similar exercise last year. And Taven St. Clair, you and Nathan were making the case for being in the top 3 because he's a quarterback. The problem is Taven St. Clair is now here now, and you've gotten to see him do things in an Ohio State jersey, and so maybe the shine has worn off for you because that's how
the car has left works. A lot.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just that's what happens every single time. It's hilarious. I had Brady Edmonds at number 2 as well. That is a large kid, and he's 16 years old. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be flipping for Ohio State, even though he lives in California, simply because this kid's got every Ohio connection you can think of. Like, he's got grandparents who are Ohio State football fans. He is exactly what they look for in national kids with Ohio ties. He also just so happens to play a position where the head coach here is pretty darn good at developing those guys, you know? But what if he is Julian Sand level talented and he's also 6'5", 225 pounds by the time he starts playing football for Ohio State? Because right now, 247 Sports has him listed at 6'5", 215.
Yeah.
So, and that's 215 high school strength and conditioning program. 225 with Mick for 2 years before he touches a meaningful football field. And he just does the normal Ohio State development plan. I think you might be able to make the case that because of his position, his talent level, and his size, he might have a better chance of being the number 1 pick in, what would that be, 2029? I can't believe this is how far out we are with this.
No, 2030.
2030. Okay. The kid who has not even got, I don't even know if Brady has his driver's license yet, but we're talking about the 2030 NFL draft. I had him at number 2 because I did play it safe and keep Jeremiah at number 1.
Mm-hmm.
But Brady is my highest quarterback.
I see Will Howard and the way, like he did the Gruden QB camp, the way guys like Gruden get pumped about his size.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, give me that size with maybe better arm strength, and I'll tell you exactly what NFL teams think about him. Go turn on the Gruden video with Will Howard.
Go ask every team that's had the number one pick in a year where we have a quote unquote generational can't miss quarterback. They're all 6'4" and 220 and taller and bigger.
Yeah, get ready for the Josh Allen comparison. It's coming. It's inevitable. Every year we're going to get one of those now.
Is that your highest quarterback, Andrew? I mean, you cover him and you talk to him. Is he thinking about the 2030 draft already?
Well, I'm sure he is. I'm sure.
He's not thinking about prom?
Well, you can have two thoughts. You don't have to think just one thing. Right now, I'm on this podcast, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what am I going to eat for lunch when this is over? So
yeah,
you can have more than one thought.
Yeah, his prom is probably tomorrow. The NFL draft for him is 5 years away.
He can't go to prom. He's a sophomore.
So?
Well, I guess you have to get asked by a junior or senior. I guess that's the way. I think that's the way it worked. But
it's like the 5-star quarterback can go to prom if he wants to go to prom.
Yeah, you don't think he's got enough.
Yeah, I think prom is just for like juniors and seniors.
You don't think he's got enough pool in his school that they're like, yeah, let's bring Brady in. Let's just get him here.
I guess maybe. Brady. So the thing with Brady,
that the next time you talk to him, it's like, hey man, did you go to prom?
Did you go to prom?
Yeah. Forget the recruiting.
Tavian St. Clair wasn't at OSU's 2024 spring game because he it was not spring game. It was one of the games in October. Maybe
he was at homecoming
because he had homecoming. He was at every home game except for the one he had homecoming.
Yeah, they can be teenagers. So ask Brady. No, don't ask it. No more recruiting questions. Don't ask him about it. Just ask him how his prom went.
Yeah. What was the question? I forget what the question was.
Should Brady Edmonds, as a guy who is still 2 years away from being able to even be an Ohio State Buckeye officially, and maybe 4 years away from being their starting quarterback, should he even be on a list like this, let alone Stefan and I having him at number 2, behind the guy that we know is going to be a top 5 draft pick, and depending on what the strength of the quarterback year is that year, might be the number 1 pick anyway.
Yeah, he should be on a list like this. He was not my highest quarterback.
Okay.
But the reason he should be on a list like this is because I have eyes, and I went up and saw him throw in Massillon, and this kid can rocket the football. And when you were gone, Stefan and I did a recruiting pod, and one of the things that I saw the comparison from 247, and I kind of agreed with it. They compare him to Justin Herbert. Like, this is a guy that, I mean, if you put up a wall, he probably throws the football through it. So, yeah, when you talk about a football player that does have this kind of, that does kind of have this kind of talent and does have this kind of backing, I think you feel pretty good about having him on a list and saying, you know what, when he gets to Ohio State, this is a guy that, depending on the quarterback room, we're having discussions about when he can play.
So should we have him at 2? Do you agree with that?
No. That's so. I had a hard time doing this. I had Tavian at number 2. I had Tavian as my second quarterback and at number 2 on my list behind Jeremiah. And here's why. I had Brady there for a second. Well, I started off with Tavian, and then I had Brady, and then I went back to Tavian. And the reason I went back to Tavian is because I thought, if you guys have ever seen Family Guy, there's an episode where they're talking, would you like the boat or the mystery box? And Lois goes, what are you, crazy? Like, we'll take the boat. And Peter goes, no, a boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. And they take the mystery box. And I'm kind of thinking with Brady Edmonds, you know what? Tavian St. Clair's here. I see it. I saw him throw the football well at spring practice. I saw him look like the most physical quarterback of the 3 between he, Lincoln Keenholz, and Julian Sayin. Like, when you just eye scout him and you just kind of look at him and say, all right, which one of these guys looks maybe more like a college-ready quarterback? Tavian is a little bit more physically put together than probably a lot of people might think. And he's also bigger. than Lincoln and Julian. So I don't know. I had Tavian there because he still was a 5-star recruit. He still can throw the football really well. He still has great accuracy. He still has all of those attributes. And while Brady Edmonds does as well, I have seen Tavian St. Clair do it in college. I have now, granted, it was against third teamers, and granted, it was in kind of mop up role. I saw him make errors in the spring game, but I've seen him be good. I've seen him look the part at college, and I just haven't seen that with Brady yet.
Is Tavian 3, Stefan? Because if he's 3 for you, then we can have a conversation about who should be number 2.
He is 3 for me. Is he 3 for you?
He is an interesting case study for me. And I think I was saying a lot of this last year when they had Tavian so high. He looks the part. Yes, he looks like a dude who, oh, wow, okay, in 3 years, he's going to hear his name called on day one. He's also got a long learning curve. There is going to be night and day between the guy who eventually leaves here and the guy who showed up here. Because with all due respect to Bell Fountain, he didn't play against anybody. He's LeBron James on steroids for that area of Ohio in terms of the level of talent he is in comparison to what that school and that community has produced over the past 30 years, which is why it was such a big deal, which is why that entire community has put their arms around him the way they have. They're a small community, and I have a lot of respect to that community. But I look at Tavian, and I'm just asking, why isn't this going to be Julian Fleming minus the injuries? Where Julian Fleming was the highest rated receiver Ohio State had ever landed back in 2020. He was a top 5 player in the country. All the descriptions that you wanted to put on JJ in terms of how people viewed him as a recruit, to some extent, that's what Julian Fleming was. He even wore number 4. But then it took away the context of Julian Fleming was from a small town in Pennsylvania. Physically, he looked the part, but he was from a small town in Pennsylvania where it was a large gap between what he was as an athlete and what anybody else was an athlete. And he also played in an offense that was a wing T offense, so he spent a lot of time blocking, and every so often they throw him the ball. That sounds a lot like Tavian St. Clair. Guy from a small town, didn't necessarily play against the best competition in the world. Now, Tavian has benefited from the fact that Ohio kids can play 7-on-7 now, so he did get to spend his last year of being a high school kid in that summer, like doing some 7-on-7 stuff. So he's had a little bit of exposure, but Julian Fleming had a little bit of exposure. He went to the opening. He went to a lot of these camps. But if Tavian St. Clair is as good as Will Howard was this year, right? We don't think Will Howard's a first round draft pick. We think he's a solid day 2 pick. If he's as good as Will Howard was this year, meaning they won a national championship, does that ceiling belong on this list in the top 5?
I mean, who's to say he couldn't be better than Will Howard as an NFL prospect?
How much better? Are you expecting someone with that description to be? And if he is, I hope he is. And I will gladly come on this podcast in 2 years and be like, hey, man, I was wrong. Tavian St. Clair was all of that. I've seen his description before, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse in the expectation that he's just going to turn into something when he's never really had to show it that he was ever going to turn into that based on what he was going up against in high school.
I mean, yeah, some of it is us projecting, but I think the big thing holding Will Howard, for example, back is arm strength, arm talent. I think that's the big thing that NFL teams are talking about with him. I think Tavian St. Clair can have better arm talent than Will Howard. Puts him up a notch when it comes to NFL prospects.
Okay.
Well, I mean, anyone that we talk about that isn't, Jeremiah or Carnell is going to be projecting.
Yeah, but there's a level
even
of
Brady Edmonds we're projecting.
Yeah, which is why you got to take in all the variables and all the context.
Right.
Brady Edmonds is playing out in California, where they breed quarterbacks like trees. Like, it's just like what they do out there. So, okay, 5-star quarterback from California turning into a highly productive, highly efficient quarterback in college and ends up being a first-round draft pick. That we've seen that story before. We have not seen the Tavian St. Clair story before. Work out to the degree that we're putting him here as when I put my top 4 guys, it's guys who are, I think they might be the number 1 draft pick in their NFL draft. And if they're not, it's because they're not a quarterback and they're the first non-quarterback taken. That was my whole top 4. And I'm not sure Tavian is going to be that quite yet.
So introduce another name to the list then. Because it sounds like, at least in terms of consensus, it's going to be Jeremiah and then Brady.
Chris Henry Jr. For the record, he is my last, I'm not even on the roster guy yet on my list. Because at some point, it's like, all right, dude, he's 17 years old. Like, relax. But Chris Henry Jr. is 6 foot. Listen, man, he's 6'5", 205, and he's the son of an NFL player and has lived with NFL players. And there's a reason why, outside of whatever his family situation is, he's not playing down in Cincy anymore. He's at Modern Day, which has produced how many NFL players over the past 25 years? I don't know. I just think I don't know if he's going to be JJ physically was a little bit more ready. JJ's 215 pounds. Chris Henry it looks like a basketball player. So I don't know if you can expect him to do 76 catches for 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns as his true freshman year. But he also won't have to, because his true freshman year is going to be Jeremiah Smith's last year here, so he can spend that year learning behind JJ. The same way Marvin got to spend his first year here learning behind Garrett. But that's it. Son of an NFL player, looks like he has all the traits in the world. That's what an X receiver looks like. And he's coming from a high school powerhouse that produces NFL players at a crazy rate. So, and he's playing for Brian Hartline. I just think he's going to be in that line of Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith. The last 3 dudes who were Ohio State starting X receivers or first-round draft picks. Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then JJ is going to be a first-round draft pick. This dude's the next X receiver here. And he's probably going to be a top 10 pick.
So I can be talked into this because I had Chris Henry Jr. as 4th on my list. So you have him 3rd. Gillis,
Yeah.
where did you have him on your list?
Oh boy, I had him 6th.
Interesting.
I had the 3 quarterbacks, Julian, Brady, and Tavian, ahead of him. And then Jeremiah, and then another player.
So, Stefan, your top 4 is JJ, Brady Emmons, Tavian St. Clair, and Chris Henry Jr.?
Yep.
Okay. My top 4 is JJ, Brady Emmons, Julian Sand, Chris Henry Jr. Okay. So 3 through 10 is where we have conversations. So let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll start to just formulate our list here and just throw names out there and see how we do this here on Buckeye Talk.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
This episode is brought to you by Chevrolet. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Chevrolet Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Chevrolet.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. We're trying to come to a consensus. Top 10 NFL draft picks, prospects, regardless of class, regardless of age. And we're including players who are currently going through the draft process, current players on the team, and then guys who are currently committed to Ohio State. So that's their 26 and 27 draft classes. They don't have anybody in 28. So far, we have 2 names. We have Jeremiah Smith, who isn't eligible until 2027, and then 5-star 2027 quarterback Brady Edmonds, who isn't draft eligible until 2030. In fact, he's still in high school. I don't even know if he has his driver license, but that's our list so far. And now we've thrown out a bunch of different names. Julian Sand, Tavian St. Clair, Chris Henry Jr. Is there anybody else you want to add to this list? Because it seems like this is going to be 3 through 8 for this list. Or is this just going to be quarterback and receiver driven?
Well,
It's going to be quarterback and receiver driven.
it will be quarterback and receiver driven. I think there's 2 defensive backs who I have between this 3 through 8 if we want to go if we want to start at some point, we're just gonna start tossing names out here, figuring out how we want to put them in order.
So allow me to introduce somebody who I have the highest on this list. I'm higher on him than either of you guys.
Okay.
And that's Carnell Tate. I had him third on my list. And the reason I had him third was a little bit of what I was saying about Brady and Tavian, where it's like, hey, the idea of this guy is so much better because, they're not on campus yet. And then once they get on campus yet, it feels like we move to the next guy. And we move to, hey, well, Chris Henry Jr. And then, maybe when we do this list in a year, Chris Henry Jr. is not as high on this list. And Jameer Brown is higher than Chris Henry Jr. And then whoever the next guy in 2028 is going to be higher than Jameer Brown later. Like, it feels like we could just do that going down the line. And I get it. I do. We are projecting here, but
at some point you got to stop projecting.
At some point you got to just say Carnell Tate. We are still projecting with Carnell Tate. We are still projecting Carnell Tate is going to be, is going to take a step forward from what he did last year now that Emeka Egbuka's gone. But 52 catches, 733 yards, 4 scores. I mean, I think we're all kind of betting that that'll go up a little bit if he's going to be their number 2 receiver. He's like 6'3". He's listed at like 190. Like, this is an NFL ready receiver that when you talk about the 2026 NFL draft, I mean, this is also maybe a top 10 pick. Like, if we're going to talk about, Chris Henry Jr. is, he could be a top 10 pick and all these kind of great things. Yeah, sure. But so with Carnell Tate, like, Carnell Tate might be in that mix as well. He might be, like, would it surprise you? I'm trying to think what receivers are draft eligible, but would it surprise you if he's the number 1 receiver off the board next year?
So I think we're underselling another guy on the current roster. Caleb Downs is going before Carnell Tate. Caleb Downs is projected top 5 pick in mocks that I'm looking at.
Can we do this?
Caleb Downs has a case to be number 2 on our list if we're being quite honest. And I have him ahead of Carnell, way ahead of Carnell.
I feel like we did what I knew we were going to do. We were going to come on here and name JJ and a bunch of quarterbacks because we're all like, oh, the draft's weird. They love quarterbacks so much. Yay! Which is true. But also, we've seen drafts where there's one quarterback taken in the first round. We've seen drafts where the top 5, there are no quarterbacks taken. I think recency of we've seen quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, right? That's kind of thrown us into a tizzy a little bit here.
I'm almost talking myself into Caleb Downs at least being number 3 right now. The Brady Edmonds thing, I'm very sold on Brady Edmonds, and maybe you guys can talk me off of that. I genuinely think he's going to be a top 2 pick. But Caleb Downs, I'm going to move him up to number 3 in real time here, and you guys can disagree or not. But I just saw a mock where he's number 5, and I'm like, maybe, yeah, sure, he's not the biggest guy, but like, man, he's the best safety in the country. He's the best defensive player in the country.
He is the exception when it comes to safeties. If you don't know what you need and you're just take the best guy on the board, you take Caleb Downs next year. And someone in the top 10 is going to do that. I moved Caleb Downs up to 3.
We've reached another consensus.
Yeah, he's just, Andrew said, at some point we got to stop with the projection things and go off something that at least we have some tangible data with, which is why I'm glad you brought up Carnell Tate. Obviously, consensus, big boards, NFL mock draft database, it's difficult right now because people are still so focused on this draft. I'm sure you'll see a lot of updated versions of the 2026 mock draft after that. But right now, Carnell Tate is 5th in the consensus. Caleb Downs is 31st, but that's because he's a safety and whatnot. Literally every single person ahead of him is a wide receiver, edge rusher, quarterback, or defensive lineman. So, whatever. Caleb Downs is going to be a top 10 draft pick. I'm not against putting Carnell Tate 4th because I don't think it's a projection at all. We know how good he is. He also just played with 2 other first-round draft picks last year, and so he didn't get to have necessarily the production. It's almost like Bama. Remember Bama in 2019? when they had 4 dudes. And so everyone's like, listen, Jaden Waddle was the best one of the bunch. And like his production was just like kind of pedestrian. And guess what happened? The two who were the pedestrian numbers that year, go look at those 2019 Alabama receivers. Devontae Smith ends up winning the Heisman a couple of years later. Jalen Waddle's the highest draft pick of all of them. So I don't think there's a projection there. I think Carnell Tate being in our top 5 is not off base.
Carnell being high, I think, I obviously, look, maybe I was a little too low on Downs. I had him 7 behind the quarterbacks, behind Carnell, Jeremiah, and Chris Henry Jr. The reason that I had him that low, and obviously it sounds like you disagree, is because like I just have this fear for Caleb that you're gonna get a Kyle Hamilton situation where everybody looks at, like, if you go look at that 2022 draft, I pulled this up as I was talking. These are the picks before Kyle Hamilton. Defensive end, corner, defensive end, tackle, receiver, receiver, defensive tackle, Kyle Hamilton at 14. And I was like, okay, what happens if you just throw a quarterback or two into that mix? You get a couple edge rushers, maybe you get an offensive tackle, Carnell Tate. I was like, I wonder if positional value is going to hurt Caleb a little bit, even though he's probably the best defensive player in college football. I wonder if there's going to be teams that go, yeah, well, would you rather have a franchise corner or a franchise safety? And I wonder if teams are going to do that, and teams are going to kind of talk themselves out of it, which would be wrong, by the way. That was why I had him 7 on my list, because I looked at it and I think quarterbacks and receivers might get valued a little bit more highly in the NFL draft.
I agree with everything you said there in principle. I think there might be NFL teams that know that you can't just look at him as a safety. Like, you can't just write safety and say that's what he is. If Ohio State uses him in all the different ways that they do, there's going to be an NFL team that wants to do some of that.
Well, that was why I think that was why I brought up the Kyle Hamilton example, because when he came out, it was like, well, this is your tight end eraser. He's 6'4", he's 230, he can cover tight ends, he can do all these other things. It's like he had this positional versatility, and he ran like a 4.5 something, 4.58 or something at the combine, and people were like, well, it wasn't a 4.5 flat, so he's slow.
Where did he end up going in the draft?
I'm wondering, it's like, oh, well, are we going to be able to, are people going to nitpick Caleb Downs about
14th overall?
Again, I'm not agreeing with these people. I want to be clear about that. I looked at it and I'm like, man, what if they're, he's a little bit small and we can't play him.
You're making it sound like he dropped to the second round. He dropped to 14.
Yeah. But
like, if that's the floor, then Caleb Downs is high on this list.
Of course he's high on this list. But that's the reason I had him at 7 on my list was because I fear a situation like that.
You fear him dropping to 14?
Hold on. Because I think that like Chris Henry Jr. and Carnell Tate and Julian Sayin and Brady, I think these guys are all like top 10 pick level.
You think there are 6 people in the Ohio State ecosystem right now that are top 13 picks?
I think they can be, yeah.
I think you're leaning a little too much on projecting here.
Yeah.
Because Caleb Downs is a top 15 pick for sure.
He's top 15 pick for sure, right.
Carnell Tate could be a top 15 pick. I struggle with Carnell because I don't know exactly where Mecca's going to go, but every mock I keep looking at has him at like number 20. So like, I almost know for sure that Emeka's going in the first round on Thursday. I don't know 100% that Carnell Tate's going top 20. I think he will be a first round pick. But Emeka, we have every mock draft for the most part that you look at. I'm looking at Kuiper and Yates on ESPN. They have him going number 20. How many people on this list do we think are for sure top 20 picks? It seems like that's the range that Emeka's entering right now.
So here's my question. Because when we're talking top 10 draft picks, we're talking about dudes who from day one, you're expecting them to come in, you just plop them in. And they're one of your best players. You think there are 6 players who are plop right in and he's awesome. Not 6, because some of your guys are quarterbacks. Of the non-quarterback guys, you have JJ, Carnell,
and Chris Henry Jr.
Mm-hmm. You think for sure all 3 are plop right in and they're awesome in the NFL from day one?
Yeah, I kind of do.
Okay. I'm not asking that question as if he's crazy for saying that. I think
No,
we're
I
just
know.
trying to
Yeah,
have
but
a
I
conversation.
kind of do think Jeremiah Cornell and Chris Henry Jr. have that, like, they're going to be awesome immediately in the NFL.
I think 2 of the 3 are going to be. I think Cornell. I'm not sure. I think I'm with you, Stefan. I'm not sure if Cornell is day 1 wide receiver 1 in the NFL because he wouldn't have been this year, even if JJ didn't exist. And I don't think Emeka is either. I don't know. I just think Caleb Downs is too low. We need to bring him up. That's my analysis for this.
Yeah, no, Caleb Downs. I've moved up to 3. I'm kind of when I opened a mock and I saw him at number 5, I was like, what are we doing here? Like we're missing the point on how
We're
good
hating on
Caleb
the
Downs is.
receivers. That's what we're starting to do.
Yeah. We okay. Quick group session here, real quick. We're all gonna look each other in the eyes. You can draft defensive players. There will be defensive players drafted because I think most of our list. I have 2 defensive players on my list. Like we're forgetting
What did
that.
you see from Cornell this year that says, Andrew, he's 100% going to be a top 15 draft pick next year?
Oh, I mean, I think the size is something that
Okay.
when you pair that size with the route running ability, I think his ball tracking is great. Like, I think back to that Northwestern catch in the end zone,
Yeah.
like that diving catch, like right in the corner. Like, I think big playability is something that he's got that I think is really going to matter. And I think, when we get to this season, I'm kind of thinking we're going to have 70 catch, 1,000-yard, 8-ish touchdown receiver from Ohio State. Yeah, that guy sounds like a first-round pick to me. That guy sounds like a layup. That everybody should take him as their number 1 receiver guy to me.
What if he does all that and he's T. Higgins, who went 33rd?
Yeah, I guess. I'm trying to think who else was. That was a loaded receiver class. I do remember that.
The way I'm looking at this right now, and I'm kind of starting to like have my own tiers of just like these guys. I think pretty safely are going top 15, and then I think Carnell's kind of in the next tier in a group with Emeka, where like I think this guy's going in the first round, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was early second round.
Yes.
Like Jeremiah Smith is not there. He's not going second round. Caleb Downs
No.
is not going second round. Brady Edmonds not going second round. Like these are guys that we're pretty confident are at their floor, like number 15, number 20, something like that. Like we have to take floors into account here too. Like we can say for all these guys, I could see Carnell Tate going as high as top 10. Yeah, but I could see Carnell Tate going in the second round.
Yes. So, okay. So let's see, because we've just introduced a lot of names. I don't know if this is the greatest listening pod, but this is what happens when you're trying to figure it out in real time. Hopefully, you're getting a look inside of our brains. There is no world that exists where Jeremiah Smith is not a first round pick. That's why he's number 1. Right now, with what his trajectory seems to be with Brady Edmonds, there is no way how we're thinking right now that he is not a first round draft pick. Is that a true statement?
I think so.
Andrew? Okay. No. That's it. That's your answer. Because if that's your answer, he's got to come down. Because to the point Stefan just made, floor has to matter. Caleb Downs, with where he is right now, there is no way that 12 months from now he is not a first round draft pick. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Then he has to be number 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Carnell Tate, there is no way 12 months from now he is not a first round draft pick. Or maybe even 2 years from now. Because it's not a guarantee he's a 3 and done guy, but there is no way that over the next 2 years, whatever draft he is in, he is not a first round draft pick. Is that true?
I don't think so.
Andrew?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we can hold on him. Julian Sand, whether it's 2027, 2028, there is no way he is not a first round draft pick. Is that a true statement?
That's true. Oh, sorry. Not true.
Okay. Andrew?
Not true.
Okay. Chris Henry Jr. What would that? That would be 2028 or 29, one of those 2 years. There is no way he is not a first round draft pick.
I think that's true.
I think that's true.
So that's why he's third. So that's 3 guys so far.
This is a good exercise. I think we needed this exercise to help.
Yeah, because we were just throwing names out there. So I don't know. This is how good he can be. Yeah, but listen, you're saying, Stefan, you're seeing mocks that have put Mecca in the first round. Okay, 2 weeks ago, we were seeing people starting to drop a Mecca. So it's because that's
Josh
the type
Simmons
of player
and Mecca. Josh Simmons and Mecca are in an interesting spot in this conversation because I think they're the 2 most likely first-round picks this year.
But it's not like a full force guarantee.
Right. Josh Simmons, man, has been mocked like 11
Everywhere,
through
man.
second round. He's everywhere.
Okay. Tavian St. Clair. There is no way that whenever he leaves for the NFL draft, he is not a first-round draft pick.
I think that's not true.
With Tavian, I think that's not true.
Okay.
But I think he has the highest ceiling of anybody else.
Okay, we can start that in a second. Is there anybody else who fits that description of there is no way whenever they go to the NFL draft, they are not hearing their name on Thursday night?
I'll introduce a new name.
Go ahead.
Devin Sanchez.
Okay, that I was literally just about to say, is Devin in that list as well?
I agree.
I think he's a first-round pick.
I think he is.
Barring injuries, he's going to have a successful career at Ohio State, and he is going to have all the tangibles and the measurements to be a first-round pick.
And there's nothing that can happen this year that's going to change that for me. Because this year could simply just be like what Marv was in 2021, where it's, why didn't he play? I don't know, because there were dudes in front of him, and he's 18 years old. That's why.
The only thing that can happen this year is solidifying that because he's so damn good that he ends up starting over Davison.
There's no downside to Devin this year. The clock on that can't even start until 12 months from now. Unless, to your point, he does something in fall camp where you're like, oh, Tim Walton can't take this kid off the field. And now we're talking Derek Stingley, Jeff Okudah territory. Is he going to be a top 3 draft pick? Is he higher than Chris Henry Jr.?
I think not.
Okay.
I do not have him higher than Chris Henry Jr.
That's fine. Just making sure. So he's 4th, and he is eligible in 2028. Okay, so that's our top 4. JJ, wide receiver, he's eligible in 2027. Caleb Downs, safety, he's eligible in 2026. Chris Henry Jr., wide receiver, he's eligible in 2029. Devin Sanchez, cornerback, he's eligible in 2028. 4 guys who were not alive when LeBron James played his first ever game as an NBA basketball player. Wonderful. Okay, so now we've got 5 and below. Let's take another break, and then we can round out this list featuring a bunch of quarterbacks and wide receivers here on Buckeye Talk.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl. I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Xyzal. You see, Xyzal works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise, all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. That was... we found organization somehow. I don't... 614-350-3315. 2 free trial, $3.99 after that. Maybe you guys like this style, maybe you don't, where we try to figure it out and just become a brain trust for an hour and 15 minutes for you. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're screaming at us like, I don't like this. I apologize. Let us know. 614-350-3315. Andrew, you said Tavian St. Clair has the highest ceiling of anyone who does not fit the description that the top 4 have. Okay. What about his floor?
I really, as I look at this list, I'm starting to think to myself that Brady Edmonds might have the highest floor of the 3 quarterbacks that we're talking about with Tavian, Julian, and Brady. And I kind of think Julian might have the lowest floor. I think Tavian might be in the middle.
I agree with that. And it's simply because Julian's 6 foot, 205 pounds.
Because Tavian, yeah, I saw it in high school a little bit. Brady can't really move, but there's always going to be a place for a guy to get better in kind of throwing on the run. I think that's probably something that Brady needs to improve at. There's always going to be a place for that. But more importantly, there's always going to be a place for a dude who could take a 5-step drop and just throw it all over the field and just, fire a rocket out there. Tavian can move. I saw it.
Okay.
Like I watched it. And I think for many years there was there were conversations about quarterback play where it was, running gives you a high ceiling, but I think it's actually the opposite. I think running gives you a high floor because running guarantees that you can be somewhat productive in an offense where, hey, if it's not working, it's not, I got to throw it into the bleachers. I can run. So I think Brady has the highest floor, but I think Tavian's ceiling is higher.
I agree with that. Well, I don't know if Tavian's ceiling is higher, but I do agree that Brady has the higher floor. That's why I have him ahead of Tavian. I have Brady, Tavian, Julian, the quarterbacks in that order. And Julian might be the best of the three in college.
Okay, so Brady, Edmonds, and Tavian St. Clair are going to be 5 and 6 in whatever order.
I'm okay with that.
All right, so let's come back to that, and we can concrete it later on. It's just, I feel like we're going to get bogged down in talking about guys who haven't played football here yet. And we're going to have an aneurysm if we do it. So, Julian Sayin is 7, or do we keep moving him down the list? Can I introduce a name?
I think Julian should be probably 7. I think the quarterbacks should probably be all clumped together.
Why?
So you can go ahead and introduce
why? Because they're a quarterback?
No, because I think that's where Julian should be. Because I had Tavian the quarterbacks 2, 4, 5. So I did kind of have them all together as it was.
Can I introduce a name? Edric Houston.
I like it.
Edric is interesting because this is a floor ceiling conversation. Because Edric, I mean, we all really like Edric. We all think Edric's going to be awesome this year. Like, we're talking about, like, breakout year for Edric, right? Like, I don't think anybody has, kind of shied away from that. But he is an interior player.
So?
And, well, the question that I wanted to bring up is somebody else I had on my list. Not to introduce another name. I had Zion Grady on my list at 10. I don't know. I just, is he a dominant enough interior player to command that respect? Not saying that condescendingly or, I'm trying to lead you to know, but I don't know. That's a question.
So you picked the true freshman who's done nothing?
Well, right, but so it's a ceiling conversation, and that was where I had a couple different options at 10. I was trying to map out and kind of close out the list. I had Grady with a few other guys, but I was kind of uncertain as to where I wanted to go. But I landed on Grady, and there were guys in that conversation. Edric was one of them, but I don't know. I think the ceiling of an edge rusher is a little bit higher, and I went with ceiling over floor there.
Well, can I introduce some new names to this conversation? I guess not new names, but maybe guys that we're glossing over. We're talking ceiling, and we're talking a lot of ceiling. I think we have to incorporate floor a bit. Josh Simmons and Emeka aren't getting past like 35. They could fall to the second round, but they're not going deep in the second round. And they're probably going to be first-round picks. So do you think right now Edric Houston at the worst is early second-round pick? Because I think that's where Emeka and Josh Simmons are.
No, I think Edric might be a first-round draft pick. He's an interior player for like 8 months. He spent his entire life playing edge in Georgia at a pretty prominent high school. So he can play the edge. They're moving him inside because of the Ohio State's defensive scheme. A guy with his skill set and his size going up against guards is a problem for everybody. They did the same thing with Draymond Jones. And Draymond Jones has been both inside and outside in the NFL now. And I think he's better than Draymond Jones is. I think he's a first-round draft pick. And okay. I saw that dude. The problem is, again, JJ throwing off the idea of what true freshmen do. Edric Houston was playing like 12 to 15 snaps a game in playoff games as a true freshman who had just switched to a position 2 months before the game started. So
I'm okay with Edric being here, but I think this is where we have to start introducing Josh Simmons and Emeka Buka because we know that at worst they're early second round picks. So I agree. I think
That's
Edric
fine.
Houston can be a first round pick, and you kind of just reminded me that he was a true freshman last year because we
Yeah,
kind of just forget that these dudes are true freshmen. I'm fine with Edric Houston being next on this list, but then I think it's time for Josh Simmons and Emeka Buka to be on here.
that's fine. I don't to wrap up the Zion great. They're looking for defensive line help in the portal right now, and that includes edge rushers. That tells me everything I need to know about whether or not they think Zion Grady can pull an Edric Houston this year and be playing 10 to 12 snaps in playoff games right now.
Where I
And
struggle with Zion Grady too is
it says nothing about his ceiling. What he's going to be over the next 4 years of his life here, he could easily turn into something great here. But Edric Houston showed up here ready to play and forced his way onto the field in a defensive line room that featured 4 guys that we know at least 3 of those guys are going to hear their name within the first 80 picks. And another guy who was probably a top 100 pick when you look at the way he's tested now. And Edric Houston forced his way onto the field throughout all that.
I think another important thing to consider here too is like where they stand kind of in their position groups. Edric Houston could be the best defensive tackle in that class. I don't know if I could say right now that Zion Grady is going to be the best defensive end in college football for his class because defensive end's tough, man. You got dudes all over the place. There's not as many dudes at defensive tackle, and Edric Houston seems to be one of those. And I think it's why people are like kind of flirting with the idea of Tyleik Williams being a first round pick because when you've got a defensive tackle that's good, like it's the same way that you view offensive linemen sometimes, where it's like, sure, it's not a sexy pick, but like, man, I just figured out that position for 10 to 12 years.
Look, man,
I'm okay with Edric being next year.
Yeah, it's just we're not dealing with quarterbacks where it's like they didn't play as freshmen. It's okay. No. If at other positions on this team, if you're good enough as a true freshman, you'll force your way onto the field, even if it's a small role player role. But I think you're right. Emeka and Josh Simmons need to be put into this mix here. Where do you have Emeka?
I'll put Josh and then Emeka because I think there is a reasonable world where Josh does go top 15. Emeka, I think, can go first round. I don't think he goes above 20, though.
I'm assuming, Andrew, you don't have Emeka and Josh Simmons on your list.
I had Emeka.
Okay.
And as I mapped this out, I probably should have had.
How many players from the current draft are on either one of your lists? Is it just these two?
I had just Emeka.
I have just Emeka and Josh.
No Tyleik Williams love, huh?
I should have had Tyleik on there. That was an oversight. Should have had Tyleik on there.
I don't hate the idea of Tyleik going first round, but like it seems like he's not going to be.
So the consensus right now has Josh Simmons at 23, Emeka at 33, Donovan Jackson at 38, Travion Henderson at 42, and Tyleik Williams at 44. That's the top 50 picks, according to the consensus. I feel like the Donovan Jackson buzz has like cooled down over the past week and a half.
Shout out to whoever gets him at 48.
You know?
Enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy.
You're gonna look like a genius in 2 years.
Yeah. I don't know. Because when I started to put this list together, I thought about putting Donovan Jackson on here, and then you're looking at consensus drafts, and it's like, oh no, I don't know if Donovan Jackson's going to be a first round draft. But that's where Ohio State's going to have a busy Friday night. That's what it's looking like. It's about to happen.
Yeah. If we were to do like our personal, I probably have Travion pretty high on this list because I think he's going to be awesome in the NFL.
Yeah, I might have Travion.
And I think Quinshon's going to be pretty damn good in the NFL too. But we have to take into account that we're in a bubble sometimes.
Okay, I'll let you have Josh Simmons. We can put him at 7. Let's put him back at 8. I think that appeases everybody.
Did we put Edric at 7 and then Josh Simmons at 8?
No, I just fell in love with you, Stefan.
All right. Remember that.
Nah, it'll wear off. We'll be back to the regularly scheduled program. Okay, so now we have a top 9, and we need a 10.
Can you list it off so I can make sure I have the right order here?
Jeremiah, Caleb Downs, Chris Henry Jr., Devin Sanchez, Taven St. Clair, and Brady Simmons as 5 and 6. We'll figure out the order at the end of this. Edric Houston at 7, Josh Simmons at 8, Emeka Buka at 9, and now we're back to 10, which is like a Julian saying Cardinal Tate. Tyleik Williams conversation.
Can I introduce a name that we probably won't pick at number 10?
Of course.
But you just said Garrett Wilson's one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he went in the first round.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about another Garrett Wilson. I mean, if he's just Garrett Wilson.
I think Mylan Graham's in a weird spot. I think the 2027 NFL draft is going to have a lot of wide receivers and quarterbacks in it. Just looking at the recruiting class and looking at the amount of freshmen from that recruiting class who popped. JJ, obviously, you got Ryan Williams down there at Alabama. Auburn's got a guy. Clemson's got a guy. And they all are already looking like 3-and-done talents. Maybe Garrett is a
2028 guy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe he's a 4-year guy, or maybe he's a 3-year guy, right? Again, JJ threw off the math for wide receiver play. But Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams, and TJ Moore. That's Cam Coleman at Auburn, Ryan Williams at Alabama, TJ Moore at Clemson. I think those guys have essentially told the NFL, come get me in 2 years. Then there's the Micah Hudson kid who's in the transfer portal again. He was just in the portal in the winter.
Really?
Now he's back he's back in the portal again. It's crazy. There were 7 5-star wide receivers in that draft. If 5 of them are first-round draft picks, I wouldn't be shocked. And that's JJ, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams, Micah Hudson, TJ Moore, Michael Matthews, who's at Tennessee, and Mylan Graham, who's at Ohio State. If 5 of those 7, plus you throw in Ryan Wingo, who, and Andrew, I know you like him a lot at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You got Josiah Trader, who's Jeremiah Smith's old teammate at Madonna. He's at Miami. This is going to be a really good wide receiver class.
Yeah, that team in the 2027 NFL draft that has just a terrible defense, or their quarterback gets hurt, but they have a set quarterback and they don't have to take anybody. They just kind of go in and hey, we're going to take best player available. They're sitting there at 3. And then all of a sudden you might have, you're definitely probably going to have Jeremiah or Ryan Williams available to you.
But it's the same thing at quarterback. And quarterback can get weird because you don't know what old guy we're not talking about right now that's going to pop up that year. But the 3-year guys who are going to be eligible for the draft. Dylan Raiola, who was a number 3 quarterback in that draft. He's Nebraska's quarterback for the next 2 years after being a starter this year. DJ Lagway, who I think is probably the most can't miss right now.
Lagway is going to be really, really good in 2025.
Yeah. He was a number 7 player, number 2 quarterback, and then Julian Sand, who was number 6 player and the top quarterback in that draft. So that's what we're with both of those guys. And as you said, Stefan, it doesn't mean they're going to be leaving after 3 years. It could be a 4-year conversation. But let's just, for the sake of having fun with this, say they're gone in 3 years, because everybody on this list, outside of 2 people, it seems like we're projecting them on a 3-and-done basis. And that's because Emeka and Josh were 4-year college football players. Everybody else here, we're saying, hey, this is when they're draft eligible. This is when they're going to be gone, whether it's true or not. And maybe we shouldn't be doing that with Tavian, because that's suggesting that he spends 2 years sitting behind Julian, and then in 2027 he takes off and he's a one-and-done quarterback the way Dwayne Haskins was. Maybe we should just put him in the 2029 NFL draft just to be safe. But he's eligible in 2028, so who knows what's going to happen. Andrew, do you think Julian Sand has to be on this list if we think he's Ohio State's next starting quarterback?
I think so. I get the argument of Will Howard just won a national championship and he's a 3rd-round pick and blah, 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 blah. He's a mid-round guy and he has a mid-round grade. But, that's obvious. I mean, the NFL looks at more things than that. And I think Julian might be a better passer, which could matter. I think he has to be on this list. I do. I think Julian, with his arm talent, with the way that he throws the football, with the ceiling and the upside there, I understand the argument that we had earlier, and it makes sense about, is this guy gonna be a 1st-round pick? Yes or no? And that was kind of how we mapped this out. at some point ceiling matters too, and Julian's ceiling is really high, because we can say, oh, we think the other guys, Tavian and Brady, might have higher ceilings because physical measurables and all this other kind of stuff. Julian's ceiling is also still like top 5, top 10 pick, right? Like if Julian in 2027 or 2028 was the 3rd or 4th overall pick, would you guys be like floored? Like if I was a genie from the future who told you that information right now, would you be like, that's crazy? No way. You'd be like, okay, he had a really good Ohio State career then, which makes sense. So yeah, I think he has to be on this list.
I think where I go back and forth on this pick for number 10 is that Julian, I think, has an extremely high ceiling. I don't know exactly what the floor is in terms of NFL prospects.
Yeah.
I think I kind of have a better idea of where Carnell will go, so that's kind of where I struggle. It's like I think Carnell has a lower
floor or ceiling question.
Yeah.
Or is it this?
I'm okay with, man.
So I'm going to throw this idea out there. It's annoying because I think it works for both. Brian Hartline.
Let me say one thing on another topic.
Yeah.
I think what you just said about the quarterbacks is why I want Brady ahead of Tavian, is just because Brady's going to come in, and if he's asked to be a starter in year 2, I think he's going to be ready to go. I think Tavian needs a little more time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm more confident that Brady Edmonds is 3 and done first round pick than I am Tavian.
Yeah, I think Brady should be 5 because he might just be a lot closer to that description we applied to the other 4.
Now we can figure out 10.
I'm wondering if Carnell Tate's draft experience looks a lot similar to Emeka's, where if he goes 33, like T. Higgins did in 2020, technically he's not a first-round draft pick, but he's 33rd. And some of that, I'm just not sure what people are going to think of next year's wide receiver class yet. And that might push him down if people think they can wait on wide receivers. I am still not ready to give up on the idea of like Ohio State starting quarterback's just a first-round draft pick until they show me otherwise. Because they had 3 straight. And they were all developed here. And only Justin Fields spent a year at Georgia, but he spent the year at Georgia essentially being a Wildcat quarterback. Every reason for why Justin Fields was a first-round draft pick happened when he got to Columbus. Every reason for why Dwayne Haskins was a first-round draft pick happened in Columbus, especially once Ryan Day got here, the 2 years he spent with Ryan Day. In 2017 as a backup, in 2018 as a starter. Every reason for why CJ Stroud became a first-round draft pick developed in Columbus, which is why when Kyle McCord took over as a 5-star quarterback in 2023, I don't think anybody was looking at people crazy if you just thought, okay, well, this is just what it's going to be. The offense, the ecosystem is set up in a way where highly talented quarterback, highly talented wide receivers, quality high-level offense, this dude's going to be a first-round draft pick. It's why you could go, hey, what if Kyle McCord pulls a Dwayne Haskins? It's why we have Tavian St. Clair at 6 on this list. So why should I okay, Will Howard's not that. Well, Will Howard had 1 year here. All of his development came at Kansas State for the most part. Okay, 5-star quarterback who was a top 10 player in his recruiting class and is now taking over as Ohio State starter in year 2. Why would that not be a first-round draft pick? Are we just allowed to have that benefit of the doubt with it?
I think so. I think that literally the only counter I would make to that is
that
we're
talking about wide receivers.
Yeah, if Emeka goes first round this year, then I can also tell you, well, yeah, Brian Hartline's going to have a first round pick every year, and Carnell will be that guy next year. you know?
But then it becomes
we're debating Ryan Day quarterback and Brian Hartline wide receiver. That's a tough spot to be.
Yeah, you're right. Which is why in both of these situations, as we keep using floor and ceiling, benefit of the doubt at those two position groups has been built in so high here that you're allowed to say maybe the floor is first round draft pick.
Yep.
So then it becomes a ceiling conversation. Who has a higher ceiling? First round quarterback or first round wide receiver?
Probably Julian, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm fine with Julian there.
Okay. And Carnell Tate's honorable mention right off the list.
We haven't even talked about Arvell Reese yet.
No, we haven't, and we're not going.
Fine. He'll be number 3 on the list next year.
Yes. That was just you wanting to bring up Arvell at some point on this pod. Did you have him in your top 10 though?
I didn't have him in my top 10, no.
Okay.
But I don't think I'm joking when I say, like, when we do this next year, he might be like top 5 on our list.
He might be, yeah, because I know he's draft eligible after this year, but I just don't see him leaving after this year. This seems like a takeoff year, and then he validates it in 2026.
He would need to get back with those NFL draft grade people who go, yeah, you're a top 20 pick. You're a top 15 pick. Like, it would have to be he has a year where it's like, all right, man, you're going to be the first or second linebacker off the board, and you're going to be, by 9:30 at night, you're going to be drafted on draft night.
And that doesn't seem to happen with non-quarterbacks nearly as often. Maybe wide receiver, it can happen a little bit more. But how many years was Abdul Carter in school? Because that might be a good litmus test for him. Never mind. Abdul Carter was a 3-and-done guy.
So maybe it is, but hey, no.
Yeah,
don't say never mind.
But here's the
maybe
deal.
it is a good litmus test.
No, because Abdul Carter, as a true freshman, was making plays in the Ohio State-Penn State game. Yeah. So much to the point that in 2023, I picked him as the preseason Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. So I wasn't wrong. I was just early. Okay, Andrew, you first. Anybody that didn't ultimately make this list that was on your list, or maybe we should have considered for the list?
Well, I mean, we didn't have Carnell on it.
Yeah, I know that, but anybody else? We've been talking about Carnell for the past hour.
No, I think we did a pretty good job. I thought we did well. I think the thing that I can't get out of my head is Travion. He would have been maybe the guy that I brought up at the end to be like, what if? What if? And that takes much of a reach and a little bit more of a projection, and that is why I didn't have him on my list, and that is why I don't think we should have him on our list. But I do think the Travion conversation is interesting because, like, think about a team, Stefan brought it up, like, think about a team that, like, needs to win now, that's sitting in the back half of the first round. Like, I don't know if this would be the best use of their assets, but I thought about a team like Washington, where it's like, you know what? They got a window with Jaden Daniels. Win now. And running backs, you're like, they don't last long. You're not second contract running backs or they're it's not a great deal. Okay. You don't need it. You're not worried about a second contract. And I was starting to think to myself, like, what about those teams that aren't worried about a second contract? A team like the Chiefs at the end of the first round. Can you imagine Travion Henderson in the Chiefs backfield? Like, I think Travion Henderson might be that guy that we're not talking about enough as a first round pick. So he kept popping up. He won't leave my brain in this conversation.
I didn't put him on the list because that's a very specific thing.
Yeah, and that is why I did not have him on my list, because I think we have to take the leap of faith to say, not only is a team going to take a running back at the end of the first round like that, a team's going to have to take him.
Yeah, so it became is that worth me just being able to say I was right about something versus having a more...
Look, man, being right's awesome. So
it is, but there's also like the idea of having a real conclusive, concise list versus I just threw this name out here so I can go, I was right if I'm right, but then not even acknowledge that I did it if I'm ultimately wrong. And I hate when people do that. Anybody, Stefan?
Mine is a prospect. There would be a lot of projecting, but I think it's interesting to think about. He's the only other commit, along with Brady Edmonds in the 27 class, of Jameer Brown. Will you give me the number one receiver in his class with Brian Hartline? I'll give you a first-round pick in 3 years.
Jameer Brown's also in that mix.
I felt more confident, and like obviously we have Chris Henry Jr. high. Like the reason I didn't go with Jameer Brown is because in my head I was like, okay, at some point you can only put so many receivers on this list, even though Ohio State seems to defy that. But Chris Henry Jr., I think I'm pretty, in terms of guys who haven't played yet. Chris Henry Jr. I'm high on. He's high on this list. And then I struggled to put Jameer Brown on there because I was thinking if I'm going to put Jameer Brown on there, then I better put Quincy Porter on there, who's already showing us in his first spring that he's going to be a dude. And it kind of goes back to like Gillis, what you were saying a little bit about Tavian. It's like why would I project the high school guy when I kind of have seen the freshman already doing it a little bit?
Andrew, you just went and saw him. Is he still 5'11", 170?
No, he said he was 6 foot 185.
Okay, so he's still the same size, essentially.
He won't be that when he goes to the NFL.
No, but I don't. Is he going to get to 6'3"?
Or is he going to get to 6'3"?
Right.
That would
Is
be
he going to be the same build as Jamar Chase? Probably not. That's why he wasn't considered for me. And it's not about his talent. It's about description. And his athletic profile isn't typically the description of wide receivers who go in the top 10. It's the big dudes, or it's the guys who are his size who play like they're 6'5", which is why Garrett Wilson went 11 in that draft. It's why Jamar Chase went as high as he did. While Quincy Porter looks like what a top 10 pick looks like at wide receiver. And I don't have Quincy Porter on my list, so I can't have Jameer Brown on my list. Speaking of people who I think are going to be on this list next year, Carter Lowe will be on this list next year for me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You just can't put an offensive lineman on the list in year one when it's so much development going on there. You just can't do it.
I also had Ethan Owinyawa crossed my mind. Maybe he's the best prospect next year when we get there. Well, I guess not. He won't go higher than Caleb Downs, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Let's see where Josh Simmons goes first, because that's the litmus test of if it's even possible.
True.
For me. Because physically, yes, he looks the part, but there's some things there I got to see a little bit more. But okay. That's all I had. Carter Lowe was the only freshman. No older guys. No thoughts to CJ Hicks. No thoughts to Brandon Ennis, Malik Hartford. Andrew, I'm a little disappointed in you because you haven't named your boy yet.
I thought about it.
Yeah, you did. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you thought
Ceiling tie.
No Cade McDonald for anybody? Thought about that one.
Yeah, There's a lot of guys who it wouldn't surprise me if they're on this list next year. Like, what if CJ Donaldson has a big year?
The running backs. The NFL doesn't care about the running backs. We care about the running backs.
You know who's maybe someone that we're actually really disrespecting by not mentioning his name? Sonny Styles is playing his second year as a linebacker.
Yeah, you know what?
Maybe.
Yeah. I would say him and Carnell are the most. They should have been on this list. But we just ran out of space. So they're not on this list. Which might be what ends up being their draft futures, is their first round draft pick talents who end up at 33, 34, 35, 36. Or I don't know, maybe they're 16, 17, 18, who knows? But okay, our official list. Number 1, Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver. He'll be draft eligible for the first time in 2027. Caleb Downs, safety. He'll be draft eligible next year, 2026. Chris Henry Jr., 2026 wide receiver commit. He will be draft eligible for the first time in 2029. Devin Sanchez, cornerback. He will be draft eligible for the first time in 2028. Brady Edmonds, their 5-star 2027 quarterback. He will be draft eligible for the first time in 2030. Tavian St. Clair, current 5-star true freshman. He will be draft eligible in 2028. Edric Houston, 5-star defensive lineman who's moved into the interior this year. He will be draft eligible for the first time in 2027. And then we got 2 guys who are draft eligible right now and going through the process. Josh Simmons at number 8 and Emeka Egbuka at number 9. And then rounding out the list, the guy we all think is going to be the starting quarterback this year, Julian Sand, who will be draft eligible for the first time in 2027. Plus guys like Carnell Tate, Sonny Styles, and Travion Henderson, who we thought about but didn't quite make the list. Let us know, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Let us know how you feel about our list, where we missed, where you liked, and everything else. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. The NFL draft this week, we'll be bringing a lot of coverage, a lot of thoughts, a lot of pods, and a lot of text. So 614-350-3315 for Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis. I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.